This is Podcast Theory.
Hello again, fellow podcaster, and welcome back to Podcast Theory. I'm your host, Jason Sircone, and today it is part 3 of the 6-part series covering critical elements and critical things that you need to consider before launching your podcast. Part 1 of this series was all about mindset. Part 2, all about time. Highly recommend and encourage that you jump back in the archives and check out those 2 episodes. But before you do, let's talk about element number 3. Since you're here today, I want to give you an inside look at something that is incredibly important to the podcast production phase. And it's strategy. That's the third thing that you need to be considering. Now, that may seem incredibly broad, and to a small degree it is. But let's talk about this strategy and why it's so important. For one, there are many ways that you could do this, and one of those ways is haphazardly with no strategy and putting in one of those ready, fire, aim types of approaches. And I'm here to tell you that shit just does not work. I've been there. I've done that. This goes way back to the old days when I first started podcasting. My first podcast, I know I've told that story. I did that for the wrong reasons. And even going forward, like think back to a couple of the podcasts that I had, there was some concepts of strategy, to quote one of the famous lines floating around as we are in election season. But overall, I know there were things I could have done better. Honestly, when I think of all 6 elements that I'm putting into this 6-part strategy, I could have done every one of them better at some point in time. And now that I have a full understanding of what it really takes, it's the reason why I'm bringing this information to you. I look at a lot of this as I fell down flat on my face so you could stand up and run as fast as possible with as much confidence that is needed to do things right. So when I think about strategy, this is something that I cover as detailed as possible in my VIP days. And when I look at strategy, the way that I built this out when I was putting my VIP day together, and if you don't know what that means, go to bombtrackmedia.com/VIP. This is one of the core offerings in my business here at Bombtrack Media. It's all about treating you like a VIP, but giving you an opportunity to build the most solid foundation imaginable before you ever press record on any microphone, on any device. I want you to have a full understanding of what strategy means and how it's going to play the biggest factor in succeeding at podcasting. Because as we do this strategy and start to execute this strategy, and even before executing, building the strategy, it's incredibly important to understand what you need to accomplish, what you want to get from your show. I mentioned the mindset. I mentioned the time in the first 2 episodes of this series. Yes, those are incredibly important, and that's something that I cover in the VIP days as well. But in regards to strategy, what I did was I sat down and thought back on 10 years of podcast hosting, guesting, production, project management, and I made a list of every possible thing that I could think of if I would have thought about it on the front end of building certain podcasts in the past, maybe they would have gone a little further. That list ended up being incredibly extensive, but to me, it is turning over every stone. It is covering every base. Apply your favorite cliche here. But the idea with strategy is making sure that if you have any questions, if you have any thoughts in your mind, you put them down on paper, you get them out, and then you evaluate them. So when I think of strategy, obviously mindset and time are big, covered in great detail in the first 2 episodes. Other things you need to be thinking about: your branding, your music, your show name, your why, which is something that I think is the most important part. And that should be the first question you're asking yourself. Why am I doing this? Why do I want to do this? You more than likely have done this exercise in a number of things. If you've built a brand, why was I doing this? Why did I want to do this? What problem did I want to solve? If you don't have a strong why, then your efforts, there's just no target. There's nothing to make your efforts strong enough in your mind to follow through with. A great man by the name of Jim Shorkey, he has a saying that your why should be so powerful that it makes you cry. If you're not accomplishing your why, you should be in tears. That applies here too. It applies to everything. That's how strong your why should be. So in regards to strategy, why am I doing this? Why do I want to bring a podcast to life? Define that. Write that out. Get as detailed as you possibly can. And then from there, you start focusing on all of the other elements of the show that would bring this show to life. Again, this is something that I could literally list this out in a number of different ways. But my advice is to connect with me for a consultation so I can show you the value of doing a VIP day with me. When we do this VIP day, we are going to launch into all of this in great detail. My goal with every single VIP day that I conduct is that you walk away without one question left to ask. So the only thing that you do need to do is actually record and create your content. Now, whether we're doing that together or you're doing it on your own, that's completely up to you. But my VIP days do include the actual production help and then post-production help as well, just depending on where you're at and if you're looking for that assistance. But nevertheless, to truly get the most solid foundation that you could possibly imagine for your show, go to bombtrackmedia.com/VIP and learn more. But there are a number of things that you have to think about. And if it's in your head and you're wondering about it, write it down. Because even if you aren't working with a consultant or a strategist like myself, you can still go to Google. You can still go to ChatGPT or Perplexity. You can get answers to these questions that you have. But it's important that when you're developing your strategy, you don't leave any stone unturned. Or not turned, whatever. So a number of things that you're going to be thinking about, like I said, the type of episode you want to produce. And I should say, this is something I talked about on the episode before this. Are you doing a seasonal production? Or are you doing a weekly production? Are you doing multiple episodes per week? Are you doing a daily production? Are you crazy like that? Again, all things to write down and consider, because your strategy ultimately dictates how this is going to go for you. And it's going to give you a roadmap. Much like doing a business plan before you launch your business, having this to refer to is going to set you up for greater success down the road. So trying to just fly by the seat of your pants, forget it. Forget it. There's too much involved with podcasting to ready, fire, aim. And believe me, I've been told this story before. I've heard it from other people. It does not work. If you have this in your mind, well, I'll just figure it out as I go. If you're saying that to yourself at any point, no, you won't. There are going to be elements that come along that you just weren't expecting. So it's better to have an idea of what those elements are now than by firing and missing and then being in the trenches with no way to strike back. It's a bad spot to be in. Believe me, I've been there, and I've talked to others that have been there as well. It's not fun. And again, falling back on those numbers that are so poor in our space, I believe a lot of it's because of that lack of strategy, that lack of not knowing how to address a certain item and then saying, F it, I'm out. I'm not going to worry. I'm not going to do this anymore. It can make burnout accelerate in your mind, and it can ultimately put you in a spot where you're just not ready to succeed and you're just not ready to grow. It's a bad spot to be in. And you can avoid all of it by implying a good strategy. This is what I want to extend to you. As I said, if you sign up for a VIP day with me, we're going to get into all of this. But for now, I would say the first step, set up a consultation with me and let me know that you heard this episode of Podcast Theory, and I'll go over these elements that you should be going over. and let you know exactly what you need to be thinking about. Because if I sat here in detail with this list, it would get a little boring just to hear me lay it all out just nonstop here on the show. But I'd be happy to sit down with you one-on-one, and no charge. I just want you to understand what is involved, because there are a lot of items that you may not have been thinking about. And as I said, when I developed this list, I was trying to get as detailed as possible and think of every single thing that I could possibly need to consider if I was launching a new podcast today. And this is a list that's going to continue to develop, because more than likely I'm going to think of something new that is just as important. Or I might discover something new that say, hey, that works. This is something everybody else should be considering as well. So go over to bombtrackmedia.com, jump to the contact page, set up a consultation. Let's talk. I'd love to share those elements with you, and I'd love to hear what you have planned. If you decide that moving forward with a VIP day is the right move for you, great. If not, at least you'll have a clear understanding of what you should be considering. So let's talk. I'm looking forward to making that happen. I'll also drop this now that in the near future, depending on when you're hearing this, obviously, I am in the process of developing a launch course that's very short, very easy to consume. It'll be very affordable, and it's going to be something that if I was launching a show, I think back to 10 years ago, if this had been available to me, I would have dropped the couple $100 that this is going to cost, because it's going to set you up with everything I've been talking about today. The focus is on the strategy. The focus is building out the right strategy, so you're thinking about what needs to happen now, what needs to happen next, and what needs to happen down the road. So this isn't just something that you throw together. We're thinking about all the different aspects and then looking at what needs to be evaluated before you proceed with your next season or your next batch recording session. These are all going to be elements that I cover in this course. Just as a little sneak preview of that, and pay attention to bombtrackmedia.com and the other podcasts that I have. Let's Blow This Up, where I'll be talking about that in even more detail in season 3 when that goes live. Lots of stuff happening here, right? So mindset, we talked about that. Time, we talked about that. Episodes 1 and 2 in the 6-part series. Today, it's strategy, baby. Make sure you have a strategy in place that allows you to succeed with your podcast and to grow it with confidence and clarity versus just trying to figure things out as you go. If you want to be on the right side of these statistics that I've referenced here many times, 90% of podcasts don't get beyond 3 episodes. To hell with that. I want you on the right side of things. So connect with me. We'll talk more about this strategy. Look for this course that I'm launching in the very near future. Jump back in the archives of this podcast and check out some of the episodes where I talked about how to develop strategy and things that you need to think about before you launch. But that's the whole point of this little 6-part series that I am using to wind down podcast theory. And I hope that you are enjoying yourself consuming this content, because I am enjoying bringing it your way. So that's going to do it for today's episode of Podcast Theory. I will be back with part 4 on the next episode. This is the 6-part wind down series of critical things you need to be considering before launching your podcast. Part 4, we're going to dive a little deeper into batch recording. So make sure that you are locked in, you're subscribed to the show, you are clicking the bell on YouTube so you know when the shows go live. Please don't be a dick about this. Until our paths cross again, this has been Pod Theory. This has been Podcast Theory, formerly known as Pod Theory. My name is Jason Sircone. Good talk. I will see you out there.